You hear people talk about, well, you know what? If I die, then that might, the Social Security money, just disappears and nobody gets it. That's partially true. First of all, if you were married, your spouse would get your Social Security going forward also. They would get the larger amount of either their Social Security that they're eligible for or yours. And that we're going to talk in detail about some strategies if you have a partner who passes away, whose Social Security should you take and when should you take it? Because survivor benefits are a really important part of your Social Security benefits.
Welcome to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. If you ever asked, how do I protect myself and those I love if something unexpected happened to me? You're in the right place. I'm your host, Niki Weiss, and together we'll explore how to protect yourself in a world where both your physical and digital legacy leave a lasting impact. And welcome back to another episode of the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. And today I am here with Bob. And Bob, you are a financial advisor. Is that how you describe yourself?
Sure. I'm a financial planner.
A financial planner. And maybe you could tell us the difference between a financial planner and a financial advisor.
Well, both can be used fairly interchangeably. I specialize my practice in helping people develop a plan and develop their largest discretionary income that they can have during retirement. So I don't so much manage individuals' investment portfolios. While I give them advice on what their portfolio should look like, I help them and educate them on the decisions they can make so that they can maximize their largest discretionary spending for the remainder of their life in a very conservative way, all the way up to the end of their life, to age 100.
The end of life, right? And it's interesting because I've spoken to several financial planners and they use that best case scenario. We want you to live into your 90s and 100 and your go-go years versus your no-go years, and the kind of buzzwords that financial planners use, because you don't want to make that end of life, like you use the word retirement, right? So retirement actually sounds like a lot of fun versus end of life might be that you need to use your resources for care, like personal care. And do you talk about that much with your clients?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, deciding on whether an individual should purchase long-term care, it's a huge decision. I know that's a discussion for another day. Not everybody needs to purchase a long-term care policy. Many do. But when we look at an individual's personal situation, that will help us drive what exactly investments they should make, how conservative they should be with their portfolio, when they should take Social Security, and a number of other decisions. Now, when I help develop a discretionary spending, I'm going to call it a budget for an individual, I'm looking and saying, okay, this is how much money you can spend every year using today's dollars, because let's not even think about inflation, but all the way up till age 100. And what I do is I take all of their investment numbers, everything that they have in bank accounts and investments, and we think about spending all of that down till age 100. Now, if an individual has a home, has other real property, we actually don't put that in the model, because that is, again, one of those additional safety nets that, God forbid, somebody at age 90 needs to go into an assisted living care facility. That becomes another asset that they could use. Again, every individual is different. That's why they are custom to the individuals.
I mean, it's about building that plan. But it must be very difficult to have, if you're talking to 40, 50, or 60-year-old, to get them to wrap their head around, hey, this money that you've spent a career, a lifetime building, you might spend it down in a very short period of time at your end of life. And it's interesting how you use, the financial planners tend to use the number 100, right? So we want you to live to 100. But how realistic is that? And do people run out of money?
Hey, there are people that run out of money, along the way. That's why, when I do financial planning, first of all, I use very conservative investment return numbers, because as individuals get into their retirement years, they do need to become more conservative. And it's one of the reasons why I talk about Social Security, because Social Security does provide one of the best benefits for planning that later stage in life. And I know we'll probably talk about this a little bit more about when should I take Social Security.
But for today's purposes, let's talk about survivor benefits when it comes to Social Security. So we're talking Social Security for people that really don't understand how Social Security plays into their end-of-life planning.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, as an individual, you're earning your Social Security benefits. Your Social.
So I paid into it. So I'm going to jump in. So I started working when I'm 18. And as soon as I started working, the government takes out a piece of my paycheck to put into this Social Security bucket. So, and then at what point do I get some of that back?
Okay. At age 62 is the absolute youngest age that you can take money out of your Social Security bucket. For most people, I'm going to tell you that would be a huge mistake. For most people that are in their early 60s, what the government says is your full retirement age, or FRA, is age 67. So that's the point where the government says that is the full Social Security that you're going to get. But there's actually a benefit to waiting a few years. So let's just talk about taking Social Security at age 62, which is the youngest, and your full retirement age. If you take it at age 62, you're agreeing to take 30% less of Social Security for the rest of your life. You've locked it in. Your Social Security payment will increase by the rate of inflation only. So that is a very big change. At age 67, you get the full amount of your Social Security, and that is calculated from your highest 35 years of working. Now, the benefit to waiting until you're age 70 is your Social Security does increase by 8% a year, and plus that's inflation protected. That is a huge guaranteed rate of return, something most people can't get otherwise.
Yeah, you are gambling though, because life happens. And I can tell you about several family, friends, and clients who got a diagnosis in their 50s or early 60s. So then what? How do you have those conversations with your clients?
So absolutely. So number one, there is no one size fits all. Everybody is in a different situation. For the majority of people, when you decide to take Social Security as an individual, waiting as long as possible is a good thing. And I'm going to explain the reasons why, because there's a couple of reasons that people just don't know. Now, I'm going to tell you the reasons why you should take Social Security as soon as possible. So
okay.
if you have somebody with a end of life diagnosis and they're getting into their young 60s, they don't have a spouse that if their spouse maybe earn more money than them, they should absolutely take Social Security right away. If somebody has no money, they're heavily in debt, they need money just to survive, taking your Social Security as soon as possible is absolutely the right decision. The reason why many of us, economists, including myself from a financial planning perspective, say delaying as long as possible is because it provides a number of options. So number one, it grows. In your early years from 62 to 67, it grows almost 8% a year. So it's growing significantly and it's growing inflation adjusted. So if you have an early retiree, so you have an individual who does retire at 62, they step away from their job, they are in many times better off financially by starting to use their 401k or their IRA money in those early retirement years. You hear people talk about, well, you know what? If I die, then that money, the Social Security money, just disappears and nobody gets it. That's partially true. First of all, if you were married, your spouse would get your Social Security going forward also. They would get the larger amount of either their Social Security that they're eligible for or yours. And that we're going to talk in detail about some strategies if you have a partner who passes away, whose Social Security should you take and when should you take it? Because survivor benefits are a really important part of your Social Security benefits. But right now, I'm just talking about your Social Security as an individual. The other reason why delaying your Social Security can help, if you had a spouse who was not a high earner, as your Social Security gets larger, they can ultimately get half of what your Social Security is. So by delaying taking Social Security till at least your full retirement age, they would get half of what your Social Security is. So if you had somebody who primarily was at home raising the kids and not having a big income, that way their Social Security would be larger too. So those are a couple of the key benefits to delaying.
Do you think the couples are having these conversations and planning for it?
Not nearly often enough. Yeah. So it becomes a team effort. I think the most important thing is you hear people who were the big breadwinners say, I want to retire. I want to get my Social Security. And they start taking it at 62. And let's face it, my male cohorts, statistically, we're going to die first. I just know that. We see that. We see that across the board. By me taking my Social Security at a younger age, and if I do pass away before my wife would then have either her Social Security, which would be smaller than mine, or my smaller Social Security. I am saying I love you to her by actually waiting as long as possible and having her take that larger Social Security that she potentially would have another 10 or 15 years getting for the rest of her life. Because again, when a married couple passes away, the largest of the benefits is what gets paid to the spouse.
And my understanding, let's talk about divorce, because my understanding is that even in divorce, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but right. So if a couple gets divorced and they were married for X amount of years, that the wife can still draw on the ex-husband's Social Security if they were married for a period of time. Is that correct? As long as she doesn't get remarried.
Absolutely. While her ex-spouse is still alive, when her ex-spouse starts to take Social Security, she can claim, or he can claim, up to half of what their Social Security would be. So that is as if they were married and with both individuals. Now, in the situation where their ex-spouse has passed away, they would be eligible for the full social, and they had been married 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
And,
okay.
And if the individual is under age 60 and they hadn't been remarried, then they would be eligible for their Social Security.
So we need to reiterate this one again, folks. For the, I'm in my second marriage, right? So I always, have a good divorce. Like I have this whole theory about a good divorce. So it's back to maybe it really is good to keep track of your ex-spouses because you never know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we really don't talk about that. You hear like, oh, we never had kids. I never spoke to him again. Well, if you didn't get remarried and he died and you were married for, what'd you say, 10 years was the number right now?
Yeah, you had to have been married for 10 years for that benefit.
And then how would they apply for it? They would just apply for survivor benefits?
Yeah, they would open up a case with Social Security. You can do that online or in person in an office, and they would apply for the survivor Social Security benefits.
So it's not just limited to spouses. Children are also eligible, like, or underage children, I believe, right? So I'm speaking out of turn, but is that true as well?
Yeah, let's dive into survivor benefits real quickly.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because I've got a couple of situations when you apply for survivor benefits. It's not everybody shouldn't do exactly the same thing. So let's talk about survivor benefits. If you're married, which is a very common situation, one of the spouse passes away, the survivor is eligible to start taking Social Security at age 60 or older. Again, taking those survivor benefits at age 60 may be a little mistake because you're going to take it with a little less money than waiting up until age 67. But let's just talk about, so your spouse can take it at age 60. If your spouse happens to be disabled, they can take Social Security at age 50. So that's a slightly different rule. If you had been divorced, again, that's what we talked about before. The divorce had to have happened. You had to have been married at least 10 years. Then your ex-spouse can take your Social Security benefits at age 60 also. Now, if you had children that were under 16 or under, and your spouse passes
16 is
away,
the cutoff age.
but 16 is,
16 is the cutoff age.
that's one of the cutoff ages. That is the cutoff age. If, let's say, my spouse passes away, I've got a 15-year-old in the house. While my child is 16 years old, I can collect Social Security in that year, the full amount of their Social Security. As an individual, I can collect that Social Security. And by the way, my child will also collect Social Security in an amount. So there's a little bit more coming into the household in that situation.
It really is, look, it's May of 2025. Social Security is a hot topic. And we really don't know where this is going to go. But for people to understand that this is not just for retirees, this is for young families who, they might have been working for 20 years and then they have young children and an accident happens or some sort of diagnosis. Well, this could make or break a family.
Niki, I'd like to share with you a situation that the client that I'm working with right now, husband passed away in his 50s, wife is in her very young 60s. They had a 17-year-old in the house. A very sad situation. In this situation, the 17-year-old is actually eligible to get Social Security up until the time that he exits his primary high school education and is ready to go on to college. So that is one benefit that they are getting right now. Now, as I mentioned before, his spouse is age 60, so technically she is eligible to start getting Social Security. But in this situation, she actually had worked for a number of years. She is retired now. She is not planning on going back to work anytime in the future. So in her situation, it does not make sense for her to take her husband's survivor benefits while she is 60 years old, 61 years old, because she will get the maximum survivor benefits by waiting until her husband becomes age 67. Again, remember I told you that's the full retirement age. So the strategy that makes sense in her case is she is going to collect early retirement. Remember I told you at the beginning of this that you can collect Social Security at age 62. So she's going to start collecting on her record at age 62. She's not going to collect on her husband's record until he's 67. So she'll get about half of what she will earn after age 67, starting in a year and a half from now. And then that will go on for about 5 years. And then for the rest of her life, she will get the double Social Security by waiting to get the full survivor benefit. That is one case on how you would deal with the survivor benefits. Now, I want to give you a completely different case because I've got another client that I was working with last month that is also very sad. Her husband passed away a number of years ago. Now, in this situation, my client is still working. So she's gone back. She's got a very good job and is continuing to work. And she really plans to work until age 67. So a number of additional years. In her situation, now, because she's going to work past age 67, and while she is eligible to take Social Security at age 60 on his record, she's going to delay a few years because maybe she'll retire at age 65. When she decides to retire at age 65, she is going to submit for the survivor benefits and take on his record.
It is just like my mind is spinning a little bit. Like this is involved, and this is really like people need to think about this.
And then what's going to happen is she's going to. It doesn't make sense for her to start taking the survivor benefits when she's still working because the way the government calculates this is that that amount will be taken away. But let's say that she retires at age 65. She starts collecting her survivor benefits. She is going to let her working benefits that she earned for the last 35 years continue to accumulate. And remember when we talked earlier, I said if you delay taking your Social Security benefits until age 70, they keep on increasing. So what this individual is going to do is she is going to take her survivor benefits up until when she becomes age 70. And at that point, she's going to apply for her Social Security, which will be significantly more than what her survivor benefits. And then she'll get the larger amount there. It's two different situations on how to work with your survivor benefits. Now, this is why it is when you're deciding to take Social Security, I don't want people to be emotional and say, I want to take it immediately. I know I'm eligible. I'm just going to go take it. Whether you talk to a professional like myself, a financial planner, whether you call the Social Security Administration, or there are some great products on the market that you can enter your personal information, answer 15 questions, and it'll give you the answer. Now, one of the best products on the market, I'm not affiliated with this at all, is a product called Maximize My Social Security. It's a web-based tool, very simple to use, and you enter your personal information, and it will show you what your different decisions are and the best one perhaps for you.
Again, this service that you provide, because this is what you're doing, is you're sitting down with people and saying, look, you have this nut, right? You have this savings, whether it's your 401k or your brokerage accounts, your bank accounts, you have this nut here, but there's the Social Security piece that needs to either make or break you, right? So for some people, if they don't have savings or a significant 401k and they really are in their mind, well, I'll just survive on Social Security, cost of living might not be able to provide all their needs, basic needs.
The wonderful thing, I mean, there's a lot of negatives about what's going on in Social Security today, and we'll talk about perhaps some of that.
But offline, over coffee.
Okay. But your Social Security benefit, once you start taking it, is inflation adjusted. So, well, it's not perfect. It is increasing. And many of your other, when individuals get into retirement age, it's natural, and people should get more conservative with how their bank accounts and their investment accounts are invested. You're going very much to CDs, to bonds, and quite frankly, many of those will not keep up with the rate of inflation. And the other thing that we need to think about Social Security is Social Security should be viewed as is basically old age insurance, because it's the only insurance that you have that will continue to protect you for the rest of your life.
We hope. We hope that right? Again, we're trying to be relevant, but I think people today certainly can start planning. So regarding that planning process, at what age do you start talking about Social Security with your clients?
I think when you're talking about how to maximize your discretionary spending, the sweet spot is talking to individuals about 5 years out from retirement. Now, when they're in their younger years, I want to encourage folks not to have a lot of debt. I want to encourage them to be investing into their retirement accounts. Individuals at a minimum should be putting 10% away into their retirement accounts. More is better, gives you more options. But really, to think about your strategies for Social Security and a plan for you in retirement, if I can talk to somebody 5 years out from retirement, that's ideal, because we can talk about where is their money located, what kind of pensions do they have, what is their health looking like, and then we can create a customized strategy for them. Now, once we create a strategy, life changes every single year. That's why with my clients, I generally 5 years out from retirement will have one big planning session with them. When I meet with individuals every year past it, it's an hour or two of time just to check in, validate that no changes, talk to them about potential issues that have happened with, things like rule changes to Social Security, rule changes with 401ks, and then continue on with their plan.
And so we get into this digital space. So how do you support people who are doing their Social Security planning, knowing that technology is going to play an impact on either how they apply for Social Security or manage their Social Security. I'm also hearing that, at least again today, that physical checks might not be part of the process, that they're going to just do either a digital or direct deposit. So how do people start to manage or prepare for that aspect of this Social Security in the fourth industrial revolution?
Well, so first of all along the way, everybody should have access to the Social Security website. Once a year, once every other year, you should log in and validate that your wages are being accurately reported. It's important because if either you as an independent contractor or as an employee, something didn't get recorded, it gets a lot harder to get those fixed 10 years looking back. You may not have the documentation to do so. So number one, I want individuals to be able to log into those systems. The security on the Social Security, the security logging in is much improved from what it was 5 years ago. So I encourage folks to do that. So that's absolutely number
Step
one.
number one, log in. You know what? And I'm thinking about it. My husband's 63. I know I logged into his account 2 years ago, but if something happened to me tomorrow, he would have to figure that out.
And well, it's not, it's not the most sophisticated website out there. There's some good things that by logging in, you can see. You can see your projected Social Security income if you retire at 62, 67, or delayed. So you can see those different models. You can put in what you expect to make and have it do a little light modeling for you. So that's number one that everybody should do from a digital perspective. The second thing is when you do get ready to file for Social Security, you have a couple of different ways to do it. You can do it all online yourself. You do not need to go into an office. And, today getting an appointment to get into an office can be longer. So if you're a comfortable person working with your computer, the systems are pretty good to be able to apply for Social Security yourself. Now, I say that you should already have gotten some good advice on when you should do that. I don't encourage folks just to say, I'm 62 years old, I can do it, I'm good with logging in, I'm good with doing these, I'm just going to go do it myself. I really suggest that, you get somebody to help you think through the process, what is the best thing for you. But the systems
And write down
exist.
those passwords. Right? That's all part of that password management piece. I mean, I would think that would be a pain point for some of your clients as well. Is just, how do you manage? Because yes, the difference between, look, I'm almost 60, right? So you and I, we're comfortable, we're tech comfortable, but our parents' age, that 80, 90-year-old who is really dependent on the checks, how much support do they need, and how much support does the Social Security provide if they're requiring everything to be done online?
Yeah. Now, today, that's all I can speak to. You can still go into it. You can still go into an office, and many of our elder clients will go physically into the office and
spend the whole day, though,
and they'll hold their hand. It is much. I will tell you, it's much easier to go into an office than trying to call in for services. There are horror cases with being 2-3 hours on hold to speak to somebody in Social Security. So, while that is an option,
put on your patience hat.
expect to be on the phone for 2-3 hours waiting for somebody to pick up. That's just the way it is right now.
All right. So if we were to put a roadmap together for our listeners, we wanted to demystify and make them aware of the survivor benefits, which is very important. And then we talked about how to manage those benefits. You're saying that they really don't need to have the conversation until, you said, about 5 years out. Is that right?
Yeah.
Before retirement?
Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking, gee, I'm 55 years old, I'm thinking about retiring at 60, that's a good time to talk about it. Now, I would highly suggest somebody who's saying, I'm going to work until I'm 70, they should back up that conversation. Because at a certain point, many
Life
people,
happens.
you'll lose a job, you get injured. The numbers are staggering with the number of people that do not make it to the retirement age that they had been planning on.
I'm thinking of our dear friend Dave, who, and this happens, right? I mean, he was a police officer for 30 years. And at 56, happily retired. And then life happened and he got a diagnosis, and within 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So he never even got a chance to access those benefits. And I think because the wife was so distraught and they were just fighting for the disease, that when he did pass, it took her many months to realize that she was eligible for these survivor benefits.
And remember those two examples that I gave you. That's why Dave's widow would have been best talking to somebody and deciding, if she had worked, should I start claiming Social Security on my record first or my record second? Should I take my widow? When should I take my survivor benefits?
You can't think about that when you're like
No,
trying to manage,
no,
chemotherapy treatment and
no, absolutely not.
No. Wrong time. It's the wrong time to be thinking about a plan. So to come to, a financial advisor like yourself, you and I are in that. We're all about planning. Plan. Look at the different scenarios. Think about best case, worst case, and just talk about it. Just have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
So let's talk about when somebody has passed away, and we want to make sure we're protecting ourselves, and kind of what happens post somebody passing away. Number one, we want to be careful about fraud for individuals. So know that a couple of things should happen when a partner has passed away. And I've seen it firsthand where somebody gets word that somebody has passed away, and if you haven't protected yourself correctly, all of a sudden people start applying for credit and doing
shut down, right? You need to go to all three of the bureaus and shut down your credit, right?
Yes, you absolutely need to put a deceased flag on your record. Now, most funeral homes will report to Social Security that an individual has passed away. That is very helpful, but you need to ask whether that is the case, that they've done that. If not, very easy. There's a way to contact Social Security and for you to do that.
Well, that is a great tip. And I think for most people, they're not thinking about that, right? As they're going to the funeral home, to ask the funeral director, will you take care of the notification to Social Security? That's a huge step. Another one of those administrative pieces that we just don't want to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate you spending the time, Bob, and you're sharing your expertise. This has been awesome. And with that, we will end our conversation here. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. I hope this conversation inspired you to take control and plan for the inevitable to protect yourself and those you leave behind. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at digitallegacypodcast.com. Remember, life is full of surprises. What happens after you die shouldn't be. So keep your passwords safe and your playbook up to date.